Hello, and welcome back to Dog 101. Joining me as always is my noisy dog Lilu. Lilu the Loud, we'll call her. She's always in the background for ambiance, and in this case it's quite fitting because what we're going to get into today is toys for keeping them occupied. It's a very common question that I had when I was working at a pet store, and believe it or not, I am going to be able to talk for almost a half hour about that subject because there are just so many options. So first of all, most people come to me with saying, "Hey, their dog's a power chewer. What toys can you recommend in order to keep them busy?" Well, as you might know from my previous videos, if not, I do recommend keeping them busy, through training, through interaction. But if you just need to have them off to the side for a spell so that you can just get some chores done in the house, there are some toys that are better than others. And first and foremost, one toy that I can't recommend against enough, and that is anything stuffed that looks like an animal that has a squeaker toy in it. Now, I will grant you, if you have a very young puppy, 8 weeks old, that has been separated from its litter, if you get a stuffed animal for them to cuddle with, that is actually very nice. They miss cuddling with their litter mates, so getting them a stuffed animal for that purpose and that purpose alone, I completely condone. I am not a huge fan of getting them stuffed toys with squeakers in them to destroy, especially ones that look like real animals. And the reason why, and again, disclaimers: I'm not a vet. I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy that worked at a pet store, was a dog trainer, was a dog groomer. But I'm going to get into some real stuff here. So there's a reason why I don't say that this is content for kids, because they might not like hearing this. I know it broke my heart, and I found this out when I was an adult. The squeaker in the toy simulates an animal's dying death rattle. So basically, the squeak is mimicking a small animal screaming to death, and that's why dogs are so naturally attracted to it, because they were wolves at one point, and that's why they like squeakers. I'm sorry if that breaks your heart. I hate to do that in the beginning of the episode, but I really want to drive home the point where, I don't see any benefit to having a stuffed animal toy, especially when it looks like a real animal. So you're outside, they see the animal that stuffed toy represents, they're like, oh, that was the thing that I'm designed to play with, and now they're not going to listen to a single one of your commands. So it doesn't make sense in that regard. Also, much like if you feed a snake frozen instead of live, I feel like a dog will have a lot less of a prey instinct if you don't keep feeding them stuffed toys with squeakers in them shaped like animals for them to kill, And I've never understood the appeal anyway. I mean, you're just going to come home to a snow globe. I mean, they're going to rip all the stuffing out. You're going to come home. You're going to have to clean that up. They're going to be all proud saying, see what I did while you were gone, and you're going to be yelling at them. They're not going to understand why. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, having said that, I mean, there are some alternatives. So they do actually have stuffingless ones that you can either just let them shake like a rag doll, or you can even put a empty plastic water bottle inside, and they like the crunching. There are alternatives, but I usually don't recommend anything covered with any kind of faux fur or anything like that. So most people come to me and they say, hey, I have a power chewer, so what's something that they can gnaw on? Well, I'll get into it in a second, but they don't necessarily need to gnaw on anything. But going back to it, if it is something that you want them to chew on, we're going to get into the rawhide controversy right now, because I've never understood the hate that comes from the rawhide. So it got a bad rep because, yes, I do concur that it is empty calories. I do concur that there have been times when a dog has had to have surgery because of it. So let me just put this to bed right now. The empty calorie thing I can't argue with. It isn't the healthiest treat for them, so I'm not too upset that pet stores are starting to go away from rawhide. But the big thing is that if you give your dog anything to chew on that slowly gets reduced to a certain size, once it gets down to a certain size, you need to take that last chunk and throw it away. It seems like it's wasteful, but the reason is because once it gets down to a chunk that's big enough for them to be able to squeeze down their throat, they're going to say, well, why chew it anymore? I can just, swallow it. And if it's a big enough chunk of something that's hard to digest, like rawhide, then oftentimes it'll just sit there in the stomach, cause cause issues, and they're going to have to get surgery to have that removed, and that's going to cost you a pretty penny in vet bills. So that's a big part of where the stigma came from, but that's going to be true of almost any hard thing that you have them chew on. If you have them, chew on basically anything other than it's a treat that's made out of yak's milk. It's kind of cool. It's one where it's nice and hard, kind of like rawhide. But once you get down to that certain amount, you can throw it in the microwave, and then it puffs up. Similar to how a marshmallow does when you throw it in the microwave, so it'll puff up, and then you can give the dog that, and then they can eat the puffed piece, and then there's zero waste. It's actually really a neat idea, and I do enjoy any ideas that require zero waste, but there's different items that you can give a dog to chew, for instance, an antler. An antler especially is one that it's very, very tough, so if you get it down to a certain chunk, again, you just need to throw that thing away. I'll get into a minute why I'm not a huge fan of real antlers, but no, you know what? Let's just get into it right now. So there are going to be a lot of hard materials that you can have a dog chew on, bone, antler, and I don't recommend the real thing. Now with bone, with antlers, a real antler, they're really tough, and there's a really small chance of them actually splintering, so I don't mind if you do give that to them and you just keep an eye on them. It's recommended to always supervise a dog whenever they are using a product. Now, I feel like if you use common sense and you do observe the first couple of times that they are using a product, that if you feel like it's safe enough for you to step away, then that was the whole point of the treat. But when it comes to antlers, real antlers, there is a chance of them splitting into semi-sharp pieces. Same thing with bone. So when it comes to bone, I don't recommend doing the cooked bone. I recommend doing the bleached white bone. So I actually have an example here for you, because this is one of my favorite products to use, because I like to use anything that's reusable. And unfortunately, when it comes to antlers and rawhide and all the stuff that they're supposed to chew up, you can't reuse it, whereas you can with certain products. So I highly recommend getting a bone that has not been cooked. It's like the bleached white color, and they usually come with a filling inside. In this case, the filling has been eaten. It is now a hollow bone, but now that it's hollow, I can fill it up with my own filling and keep on using it. You see, the most that they're going to usually do is just gnaw around the edges until they realize they're not really getting anywhere, and then they kind of just leave the gnawing alone, and they do the licking. So that's what I want to get into. The licking is just as beneficial for keeping them occupied and wearing them out as chewing is. So if you think that you have a power chewer of a dog, you're going to feel like that you're forever tied to buying newer and bigger and more expensive and indestructible, quote unquote, because nothing's indestructible, toys, and you feel like it's just a money pit because you have a power chewer. Well, make them from a power chewer into a power licker. They work in the same muscles, they get just as exhausted, but now they're licking instead of chewing, so it saves the teeth health, and it also, again, usually if it's something that they're licking the inside out of, then it's something that is reusable. So I'm all over the map because there's just so much to talk about. So real quick, I want to get back to antlers and bones and stuff real quick. So if you are going to have something that they're going to chew and eventually use and then discard, I recommend artificial. So there are companies out there, one in particular that I'm thinking of, but they're not paying me, so I'm not going to name them, but they do make artificial antler, but it does have real antler in it, so they'll naturally be attracted to it. They have artificial wood, which, if you look at it, you're just like, why would I pay almost $20 for a fake piece of wood? But there's multiple reasons. First of all, it's a lot harder than wood. It's going to last so much longer. The way that these usually work out is that the dog will, gnaw on it for however long they want to gnaw on it for, leave it alone for a day, come back to it, carry it from room to room. It's going to last a while. So for instance, when we first got our dog, I got a fake antler that lasted her the first 6 months of her time with us. It was actually her favorite toy. It took 6 months for her to get it from the end all the way down to the nub. And yes, we had to throw the nub away, unfortunately, and then get a new one for her. But I mean, as far as like stretching your dollar goes, you really can't beat that. That was really a great investment. Now, this same company, I can show this one because it's discontinued now. This is a liver branch, and so they got discontinued because they made it a little too hard. So much like Um, Certain products that are super super hard, the dog will gnaw on an end, gnaw on an end, gnaw on an end, and then they're like, well, this isn't really getting me anywhere, and so they just kind of get fed up with it and just abandon it. And if it's something that's that hard, oftentimes, if it's a dog that is a real power chewer and tries to continue to gnaw on it, even though they're not really getting anywhere, I've seen them have their gums bleed. So you really want to be careful about the toughness. You want to have to be tough enough that it lasts a good long while, but not tough enough that it's actually going to harm them or that they're just going to abandon their attention. So I highly recommend the artificial antler, just from personal experience. I had recommended from a former client the artificial wood as well. Now, the benefits of these is that wood, if you give them an actual stick, first of all, who knows what's crawling on it? But second of all, if they get a splinter up in their gums and you don't notice, that can turn into an abscess and be potentially fatal and or at least a very expensive hospital bill. So let's not do real wood, please, please, please. But artificial wood is absolutely fine, and again, it lasts a lot longer than you would expect. You'd think that it would last the duration of a regular piece of wood. It does not. So if you do actually want to have them chow down on something, I can't recommend that enough. While we're on the subject of chewing, because I will get back to the licking in a second, but the chewing, so a good rawhide alternative is a bully stick. It is high in protein. It is very nutritious for them. It is a highly coveted item, so it can be a great reward after a bath. But here's where it gets a little adult here. You're gonna want to have them chew it on hopefully hardwood floors as opposed to rug. They have a bit of a smell to them. Now there are some companies that make it so that they don't have an odor. It's odor free, but the natural ones do, and I don't know what process they use for that, so I don't know if I can recommend it, but the natural ones do have a bit of a funk to them, and there is a reason. So if you have a dog that loves bully sticks, and much like eating hot dogs, you just really don't want to know what's involved in that, I suggest you skip ahead a couple of seconds because I'm about to reveal what a bully stick actually is. Okay, skip over. It's a bull penis. It's a pulled and dried bull penis. So I know that's a little bit gross to find out, and for some people it's whatever. For other people, ew, gross. I'm never touching that thing again. At least not without gloves. But that's why it is so chock full of protein and highly desirable. Weirdly enough, so those ones are they last a good long while. They're very healthy for the dog, and they're good rawhide alternative. But they're super expensive, and that's because of what they're made out of. So if you skipped ahead, know what I'm talking about. But because of what they're made out of, you can only get a limited amount, say. Whereas with rawhide, it's made out of the skin, so that's quite a bit per animal. Whereas you only get one per animal in this case. So it's an expensive habit to have for a dog. I don't recommend it, too often because of the said price. But if you can get over the squeamish factor, it's definitely a healthy one. But when it comes to the chewables, it's tough. I mean, I've never been a fan of the products that it's a holder and then you have the treat that's specifically made for it, because then you're forever tied to buying that company's treat. Whereas I like one where you can generically just fill it with whatever you want to. That's why I like the sections of bone. That's actually why I like, and this is one of the few times I'm actually going to product place a big company that doesn't need any help, that is not a privately owned one, because I do believe in them so much because they do actually make a decent product, and that is Kong's. So this is one that you might recognize. It almost looks like a snowman shape, and it is hollow. And yes, they do make treats that you can put into their toy. I mean, what company would be stupid enough not to do that? But what I love about those is that as long as you plug that tiny hole at the end with something, and then you can fill that with pretty much whatever you want to, put a little piece of saran wrap over it, stick it in the freezer. That's a big tip, by the way, sticking it in the freezer. I'll get into that in a sec, but you can basically fill this with whatever you want to. Stop both ends, and then the dog can use it, and you don't have to be tied forever to their treats. So I don't want to knock those kind of toys, because I actually have a really good buddy that has a really big energy dog with a lot of chewing energy in her. And he swears by the ones where you insert the treat into the thing, and then the dog has to scrape their teeth against one side, scrape the teeth against the other side. He says it's the only thing that's ever worked on her for keeping her occupied for any length of time. Now, results might vary. Once I heard that, I was like, well, dang, I guess I'll have to give it a shot. I bought it for my dog, and my dog figured out how to unwedge the treat. She would chew on it for the first 10 minutes, and then once it was smooth enough, then she would get frustrated, and she figured out a way to unwedge the treat within 15 minutes, and that was the first time that she used it. So I have a very smart, very scary of a chewer dog, where, much like with the Kong, most dogs, if you have something frozen on the inside, they'll, try and bang it around, and after a while they realize, okay, I have no choice but to lick the inside out. And in her case, she will often just compress the outside until it turns into a crumbly dust and then comes out, and that's how she eats it. I'm glad she's on my side, I guess is what I'm saying. Sorry, that was kind of a big bang. But, yeah, so just because you have a power chewer dog doesn't mean that you have to have chewing toys, so I like to do the reusable ones. So, like I said, freezing is going to be a game changer in most cases. So people that do have sections of bone, people that do have the Kongs, they'll put peanut butter on the inside. That'll be okay for the dog for about 5 minutes tops. And that's if you filled the thing. So that's a lot of peanut butter to use. You usually want to go pretty sparingly with the peanut butter because it's actually a very high motivational treat. So that's something that you can use for training. That's something you can use for nail trimming. In fact, while I'm on the subject, I'm going to move this stuff over here real quick. And so one great way to occupy their time is with a lick mat. Now, a lick mat, you can put, unsweetened yogurt, on there. You can put peanut butter. Basically, because of the way that it's shaped, it's going to take them a really long time to lick all of the residue out of the corners. So I don't typically use this in order to occupy their time. This is a great thing to use if you don't have a second person with you when you're doing nail trims. So I believe I briefly mentioned it in the past with the grooming, but if you have a dog that needs a nail trim and you're going to do it yourself, it actually helps to have somebody else there with you, occupying the dog's attention with, feeding it treats or what have you. If you don't have somebody with you, you can actually keep the dog's attention, hopefully, with one of these. You just, load it with peanut butter, you set it on the floor, and while the dog's furiously licking that, they're standing in one place, and then you can try and get their nails trimmed. So that's actually a good one for that. Now, yeah, so I do sometimes often seal, for instance, when I fill a Kong all the way up, I do often usually cap it with some peanut butter, saran wrap it, put it in the freezer overnight, and that's a good way to get them started motivated, where they're just like, yeah, peanut butter, and then they hit the other layers. But, so yeah, like I said, most of these bones come pre-filled, and what I usually like to do is, give them the pre-filled filling for a while until they get to a spot, usually about halfway through, that they can't get it anymore. And so what I usually do is then I'll just pop it out the other end and then either use it in, filling one of these, or, figuring out another way to use it so I'm not wasting anything. But I always try and get the ones that have a big side on one side and then a teeny side on the other side, so that way when you do, you can basically block the smaller side. You just stick something relatively, decent sized in there, and now you have a plugged hole on the bottom, and now you can fill it with whatever you like. So I believe Kong, as of me recording this, I believe that they still have on their website a place where people can recommend the recipes of what they put into the Kong. So some of them you can immediately ignore. Like, for instance, I saw one called The Bachelor, where it was Spam and eggs inside this thing. I'm not giving my dog Spam. I'm not going to eat Spam. I'm not going to give my dog Spam. But some of them are actually quite inventive. And so it seems silly. Sorry, it doesn't seem silly. It seems a little complicated. But this is one of my favorite recipes that it seems, a bit complex initially, but it actually becomes very easy. So usually a piece of kibble will actually fit that almost perfectly. So I usually plug that up with kibble, flip it upside down, and then give them... when I use the word kibble, I mean dry dog food. It's just something I grew up saying. Kibble technically is actually usually lower-end dog food. That's actually a term for it. When I say kibble, I mean dry. Hopefully, very high-end, very well-made, and good ingredients, dry dog food. But when I say kibble, that's what I mean. Sorry. Anyway. So you just take some of their regular old food and then you throw it in there. It goes to the bottom. Now what you can do is put in, either unsweetened applesauce or sugar-free yogurt, something that'll freeze really nicely, And what you can even do is I usually like to kind of squeeze and wedge in a really big treat, kind of like, at the top that they're going to have to work around first in order to get to the good stuff. And then, like I said, I usually like to do a seal of peanut butter on the top, put that in the freezer overnight. Seems like a lot, but it's really only, four basic ingredients if you do it that way. And, you're really kind of stretching your treat dollar. And honestly, once that's frozen, the yogurt and the, peanut butter and or the applesauce, that's going to take them hours. Whereas normally, if you don't do anything frozen, you just have them try and chew something out of it. It only takes minutes. So yeah, it's something that if you've seen previous episodes, I'm a huge fan of the kennel training, and it's something that I usually like to leave them in the kennel with something to worry on. So I usually like to leave them something to chew on, and I usually like to leave them something to lick the inside out of. And I mean, I don't have a camera on there, but I'm pretty sure that what happens is you leave, you release them, they go ahead and start attacking that. By the time they've melted that all out, it's been hours that they've been licking. They probably pass out until it's time for you to come home anyway. In a perfect world. I mean, that's the whole point of. Not to get into another kennel rant. It almost feels like if I accidentally get into a political rant, but with kennel, it's a very polarizing subject, so I hesitate to bring it up. But that's the whole point of a kennel is that if they have literally nothing else to do, they'll just do cat naps. I mean, I shouldn't call it that because they're dogs, but they basically do cat naps until you come home because they have nothing else to do, and that is a natural instinct for them. So it's actually a good stress-free way of having them. But if they are really energetic, then that's something that they can occupy their time with. So, like I was saying, you can do basically the same thing for the bone. You can plug one end, fill it with other stuff, and then seal it, freeze it overnight if you'd like to. With these, I typically like to just do semi-soft dog treats that you can kind of wedge in there, and that they can lick out. And yeah, those are some of my faves. So, like I said, I'm more of a fan of stretching that dollar and keeping them occupied in ways that it isn't going to be too much of a hit on their stomach. So, like I said, if you're doing a whole Kong full of peanut butter, I mean, first of all, that's really devaluing peanut butter if you want to use it for training or nail trimming or something that is a little bit more high stress and more easily distractible. And, real quick, so if you've suffered through my ums and ahs for this long, I want to throw in a quick little tip. You're going to find little Easter eggs like this peppered throughout my videos just for being a good sport. So I don't like squeaker toys. However, I do use them very often when I'm doing dog training as a distraction. So just throwing that out there. If you did already get a squeaker toy and it's too late to return it, you can still use it if you don't want to use it as a treat or a toy now that I've told you about why they like it. But you can absolutely use it as a distraction method when you're trying to do training, so that if they can do the command while there's a squeaker going on, then they can probably do it out in the real world with some level of success. Yeah, so squeakers are not. I don't hate squeakers as a whole. I just don't like them as using it for a distraction method for a dog. I do feel like there's a potential for it to, possibly, increase, the predator instinct on them. But yeah, you absolutely can use a squeaker as a distraction method. It works fantastic. I actually like the fact that there are a couple different types of ones out there. So for instance, there's the squeak squeak, but there's also the honk honk, and usually those ones are shaped like hedgehogs, but yeah, having a variety of noises for distractions are really a great thing. In fact, with her, she tends to bark when the people knock on the door. So using the, banging on the door while you're trying to do tricks has been really working great for her. I digress, but you know what? There's a little training Easter egg in there for you. And I did promise that I will get into some training videos. I will continue to promise that. But right now I'm just trying to get through some of the basics of the most frequently asked questions that I have when people come into my store, and this is a big one. People usually come in, saying it's like, okay, my dog is just so filled with so much energy. How am I going to keep them from chewing the furniture if I don't give them a good alternative? Well, that's actually a good question. If you have a power chewer dog, and they're going after furniture and all that other stuff. So yes, you can do this instead of that. They do have deterrent sprays, but there's a variety of toys out there that I'm not a huge fan of, so I don't like rope toys for a multitude of reasons. But the two big ones are that with rope toys, you really only have two things that you can do with them. You can let them play with it by themselves, where they'll either, shake it around for a bit, or just lay down and then slowly tear shreds off of. And that's not a way to let them play with a rope toy. And the reason why is because they're going to tear shreds of rope off, swallow them, and then, best case scenario, you're now going to have to pull them gently out of their butt when it comes time to come out the other end. All right. So, rope toys will tell you that they naturally help brush, floss the teeth and stuff. Yeah, you know what? I always find that the negative is a lot worse than the positive when it comes to rope toys. The other thing that you could use for the rope toys is tug of war, and that is a whole other animal. Again, if you've been in this video for this long, here's your second and final Easter egg: is that with tug of war, you want to be very, very careful. Again, I'm trying to reduce potential aggression and predator drive in your dog. Now, with tug of war, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be smart about it. So, when it comes to tug of war, you can't let them initiate it. In fact, that rope toy shouldn't even be within reach of them. You should be the only one that brings it down to play. So you should be the one to initiate it. And when you do, there can only be one of two outcomes. Either you can win, they let go, and you win, or you feel like you're about to lose, and then you give up. So they don't ever actually win. And if they start getting a little bit too, worked up about it, you end the play, And so if you're an amateur, I wouldn't say amateur, but if you're just, a little young and wet behind the ears and just not, quite sure of yourself when it comes to doing tug of war, I say avoid it entirely. I feel like this is something only for advanced people, because if it's done incorrectly, if they win occasionally, if they bring a rope toy over to you and try and put it on your lap, and then you play with them for a little bit, those are two ways that you can actually give them potentially negative behaviors, later on. I'm having trouble articulating exactly why. It's something where it can cause not necessarily aggression issues, but it's not a good thing. Just trust me on this one, where you don't want them feeling like they were the winner. If you're gonna have another dog in the house, if you're gonna have a kid in the house, even if you're just going to have them be by themselves, it's just a good, smart idea to do tug of war in a very safe, and you're controlling the outcome. So, sorry to get yeah, that almost got a little dark real quick. It's just I've seen where it can come from. It's so weird, like how once you've learned it, you can't unlearn it, and just seeing where teeny tiny little things like tug of war can just bleed into other aspects of the dog's life, and then you're just like, where the heck did this come from? Oh my God, my dog, was never like this. Why? It must just be the way that they were, that they're wired. And it's like, no. That's actually something that they accidentally learned from just something simple and innocent as teaching them to do tug of war. Arguably, you just taught them to grab, hold on, and not give up until something comes loose. To get a little dark about it. So, yeah, consider that when you're dealing with that. So, like I said. Unsweetened applesauce, and yeah, I'm going crazy tangent and then coming all the way back to unsweetened applesauce and stuff. But unsweetened applesauce and unflavored yogurt, plain yogurt, are two things that freeze up real nice and are relatively healthy for the dog. Again, as always, research your ingredients. Don't be throwing any grapes or chocolate or garlic and onion or pieces of avocado, or I might be forgetting some, but research the ingredients before you put them in. But I'm a huge fan of the carrots. So it's funny, some dogs don't initially like carrots, but one of the the first dog that I could ever call my own, I tried offering a carrot at one point, and so it took it and went, ugh, that tasted healthy. I don't like that. I was like, all right, well, more for me. So I grabbed the bag and I start crunching on him. And then he was like, whoa, wait. If it's good enough for you, then, maybe I can try another one. And then so once he realized the crunch factor, he was like, oh, these things are so fun to eat. They actually aren't that bad, So if you want to have, something kind of like, liquidy to freeze with also something solid in between for chunks so that, there's different textures, carrots, I highly recommend. It's funny, but it never would have occurred to me before to tell you. It's just, even those you might want to go the littlest bit easy on because they're actually high in natural sugars. And for a dog who's not used to anything confectionery, a little bit natural sugar can actually go a long way. So you might just be like, oh, I just had a training session. We just used carrots, and for some reason they are super energized. I don't know why they have more energy at the end of training than they did going into it. That might be why. Um, I digress. I think that is more than enough when it comes to occupying them. Again, I probably missed a lot of stuff, but there's always more to come. So that should be more than enough for you to break off and digest for now. Yeah, that was almost a pun.